Hello and welcome to the MBM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hey friends, I just wanted to pop in and talk a little bit about MBM Behind the Scenes. When I entered the yoga world as a teacher, I was surprised by how many yoga teachers were struggling with the business side of yoga. And that's why I created MBM. MBM helps yoga teachers and studio owners become entrepreneurs. It helps you to go from surviving to thriving with your yoga business. I am on a mission to change the yoga industry, to teach yoga teachers and studio owners about the business of yoga, and to help you feel more confident, successful, and abundant. After releasing hundreds of podcast episodes, I want to create content that dives deeper into helping yoga entrepreneurs thrive and elevate their businesses. This is where MBM Behind the Scenes comes in. Each week, you will get bonus content from the weekly guest or myself, diving deeper into how you can take the teachings and apply them to your business. This podcast is designed for yoga teachers and studio owners who are ready to take it to the next level. If you enjoy MBM and have been looking for an affordable way to learn more, this is it. For the cost of 2 lattes per month, you will get never-before-heard content that you can't access anywhere else that will give you tangible ways to dive deeper into your yoga business. If this sounds like something you're interested in, let's dive in. Head on over to patreon.com/MBM Yoga and sign up to get behind the scenes now. Once again, that's patreon.com/MBOM Yoga to get all the exclusive behind the scenes content. I'll see you there. Hello, friends, and welcome back for another episode of the MBM podcast. I am so grateful that you've decided to join me for today's episode of the show. This one is a fun one, but before we get to it, this podcast is brought to you in partnership with Offering Tree. Offering Tree makes digital marketing fun, easy, and affordable. They are your one-stop shop for your website, scheduling software, membership management, payment, email newsletter, and more. Keep listening to hear how you can use Offering Tree to spend more time teaching and less time managing. And I know it sounds like it's almost too good to be true, but I assure you, they do all of those things and they do all of them super well. Now, on to the episode. I am really excited to be joined by Kirbanu Klein. She is an Australian musician, voice empowerment coach, and a yoga teacher who is currently based in Germany. And one of her missions is to help people find their unique voice and use it with confidence, power, and impact. And she actually works with yoga teachers, which is pretty cool. So she helps private clients as well as trainers on yoga teacher trainings through her online courses, programs, and offerings. And on this episode of the podcast, we dive into Kirbanu's background, a little bit about why the voice is important, and then we talk a lot about how we can get our voice to become more powerful, confident, and impactful. And this is one of those things that we just don't cover in yoga teacher training programs. We don't cover this in programs that we're teaching and offering, yet it is how we make our livelihood. So this was a really empowering episode for me. It was really helpful for me. Kirbanu goes through a couple of different practices and exercises to help with finding more confidence and power in our voices. So hopefully you find those helpful for you the same way that I did for me. The other thing that I want to share before we dive into the episode is that Kirbanu is going to be offering a complimentary workshop to help with voice empowerment. And so this workshop is going to be happening on December 10th at 9 a.m. Mountain Time or 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And you can find all the details over on the show notes, which are going to be mbmyoga.com/Kirbanu, which is KIRBANU. So once again, mbmyoga.com/Kirbanu. You can also find all the details over on social media. And so this workshop is completely free. It's a complimentary workshop. It's going to be about 45 minutes long, and it's a voice workshop for yoga teachers. So you'll be able to learn to use your voice in a healthy, connected, and clear way when teaching, because your voice matters. Its sound power and the energy you share through it, along with the words you say, directly express who you are as a teacher to your students. And so we are going to be covering what your voice really is, how to use it in the healthiest way, exercises to develop your relationship to your voice, as well as a technique for using your voice to express atmosphere. And so I think this workshop is going to be really fun and super helpful. So I hope that you will join us. All right, that's all from me. I am very excited to have Kirbanu on the podcast. And without further ado, here she is. Welcome to the podcast today, Kirbanu. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
Hey, thanks so much, Amanda, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this conversation. And first question for you is, where are you joining me from today?
At the moment, I am in the south of Germany in a city called Mannheim. It's like kind of 30 minutes south from Frankfurt.
Amazing. But you're originally from Australia, correct?
Yeah. I grew up in Adelaide and spent the first, I think, 21 years of my life there. And then I kind of traveled around the world and lived in a lot of different countries, including the States. I actually lived in Boston for a few years and ended up in Germany for the last 10.
Amazing. I love how much Australians travel. I'm Canadian, so there's a ton of Australians here where I
Oh,
live.
I love Canada. That was the first place I lived in. I lived in Lake Louise.
I live in Canmore.
Oh my God, I was there often.
Yeah, not surprised. It's funny because I worked in Banff for a couple of years, and a lot of
Ah,
people would come in to the store I worked at and they'd be like, "Oh, you're not Australian. That's weird."
yeah, I worked in the chateau for 10 months in Lake Louise. And
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
everybody was actually, I met so many Australians there. It was a little bit embarrassing.
No, I love it. I love the sense of adventure that Australians have in general. And it's so cool that you're joining me from Germany. And I want to dive into all the work that you do, but let's back up a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey with yoga?
Oh, my journey with yoga. Yep, absolutely. I first heard about yoga when I was 18 at university, and there was like a course for yoga. And a friend of mine was like, hey, there's this thing called yoga. Do you want to come and do an 8-week course with me? And I thought, sure, whatever that is, let's do it. And I'm going to kind of hint at my age here. This was back in the day where there were two types of yoga, so Iyengar and Hatha. And so I did an 8-week Iyengar course, and it kind of stuck with me. And I guess, I practiced on and off, and it had a big role in my life, of course, next to meditation and other things that I was doing for myself and my inner development. Until I guess 5 years ago, where I started to do it like every day and started to really take it seriously, did my yoga teacher training. And now I actually teach yoga teacher trainings and teach a lot, obviously, with the voice also on yoga teacher trainings. So yoga is a huge part of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. And I'm curious kind of where the vocal piece came in. Like, were you into music before you were into yoga, or kind of how did that all work?
Since I was a little kid, I wanted to be a singer. That was what I wanted. And I actually grew up in an environment where, well, two things kind of music and art wasn't encouraged, but it was also it was a bit of a violent situation. So there was a lot of stuff that came up with kind of like suppressing my voice and not letting the voice out and hiding what I wanted to say. And so I guess my whole vocal journey started from really, since I can remember, like being really a little kid. And because I wanted it so bad and because it was such a challenge for me, I guess that kind of fueled the fire of curiosity and determination to really pursue that as a career.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And so tell me a little bit about what your career has looked like in terms of like the musical voice side of things.
Mm. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I kind of traveled a lot. And then at some point, so I first started performing with music. Oh, when I was about 19. I mean, of course, I was performing in school bands and plays, and it was just such a big part of my life because as I said, because I loved it so much and I wanted it so much. But I first started professionally performing when I was about 19. And I did that for a few years in a local kind of band at a local duo, and then I was traveling. And then as I was traveling, no kidding, I actually would clean houses and toilets to make enough money so that I could afford my vocal teachers. So it was just this really big thing that I was committed to. And yeah, I kind of just kept pursuing that through my early 20s until I ended up studying music in New Zealand, and got more into it then. And then when I moved to Germany in my later 20s, that's actually when the career started, like, and when I actually began to live from music and live from my music. And obviously, my voice is my main instrument, and featuring myself as a singer in that space, but also supporting myself on guitar and piano.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. And something that's really interesting to me about the parallels between, musicians and yoga teachers is one of the key things we use in our profession is our voice. And so I'd love to hear how, as you became a yoga teacher, you were able to kind of blend these two loves that you had in your life to create what you do now.
I would actually say that it happened before being a yoga teacher, because yoga was already so much a part of my life. I guess I became a yoga teacher to be able to kind of get the message of the voice more into the yoga world. Um, Honestly, so um, yeah, I guess my longing kind of fueled the whole thing. And as I said, when I came to Germany and establishing myself here and learning more and more about the voice, that was one element of it. But there was actually another really key element that happened as I came here. So as I kind of hinted at, I'd been studying with, I don't know, I guess I had about 10 or 12 significant different vocal teachers across the 10 years that I was traveling a lot and living in different places. That was great because it taught me many different components about the voice and obviously also about breathing. But when I came here, as I was establishing my music career, I was also teaching business English because I needed obviously to make a living whilst I was building up my career. And in doing that, what happened that I was talking, for like 6, 7, 8 hours a day for 3, 4, 5 days a week. And after doing that for about, I guess 3 or 4 months, I totally lost my voice. And I couldn't believe it because I was like, how can I be a professional singer and lose my voice because of talking? Something is wrong. So that kind of horrible experience, because it meant that I couldn't perform and I couldn't teach, so I couldn't earn my income. That horrible experience drove me to really research, how does the voice work? And also not just for singing, but how does it work when we're teaching? How does it work when we're talking? What is it mechanically? Like, what is going on here? And I really use myself as a scientific experiment with that knowledge for, I guess, about a year. And through that time, I developed the technique that I now teach on teacher trainings and give workshops on, and share privately with my students. Now, the other thing that happened just after that time is that I started to be a voice trainer and I started to acquire students. And interestingly, 95% of my students were yoga teachers. I have no idea why. Like, I wasn't advertising in yoga centers. It was just, they came to me, they found me. And I think because I blended this background of mindfulness, self-awareness, and I guess taking responsibility for ourselves, but also looking at how our emotions and thoughts affect the voice, as well as this mechanical part that I just explained, because I blended that, I think my style and who I am as a person just really spoke to that community. And so they were coming to me. And the thing that came up again and again was that they were losing their voices whilst teaching. They were unsatisfied with how their voices sound. They felt insecure about the way they spoke. They'd had feedback from students who didn't like how they sounded. And it was like the list went on. And this kind of, I guess, then fueled this new fire about, how can I serve this community with what I know?
Yeah, that's really inspiring to hear. And I would be curious to know a little bit more about, I guess, like, what's the wording I want to use? Like the way that we can use our voice in a way that can empower or inspire others. Like, are there actual physical things with the vocal cords and with our throat and that type of thing that we can actually learn about to help our voice?
Yes, big topic. Yeah, for me, I always say that there are two main components to the voice that we need to consider when we're, I like to say, discovering our voice, because it's my honest opinion that I would say 95% of people have no idea what they're doing when they're using their voice. And that's not bad. It's just that we don't learn it. It's the same thing as posture. When we get into yoga, we start to realize, oh my God, how do I stand? Like, what are my hip flexors doing? How's my spine? But, we don't learn these things. So I think we're just a little bit oblivious to them. So I like to teach in a way that, or I like to say that there are two main components to the voice. There is the mechanical part, which is really how does it work? So, what are the mechanical components that we need to pay attention to, give perhaps attention to, or the opposite, give relaxation to, in order for our mechanical voice to operate at 100%? And there's a lot of things that go into that. And then on the other hand, we have the whole emotional and psychological part. So this is, how are my thoughts and feelings impacting my voice? Now, the thing about the voice is that unlike any other instrument, it is inside of us. So it's not like on a guitar, when I'm playing my guitar and I make a mistake and I hear it, well, I can look and see, oh, yeah, sure, I've got the finger on the wrong position on the fret. Of course, it sounds like this. The thing is, with the voice, we don't have that kind of feedback. We don't have that level of understanding. So without learning about it, without getting super clear about how does this work and essentially having the experience in ourselves, then again, we're a little bit blind to it. And the other thing with the voice is that everything we think and feel has an impact on the way we express ourselves. And we can use that in an empowered way, in a conscious way, or, as is often the case, we can be disempowered by this. And that happens when the voice comes out in a way that maybe we don't want to sound, or, it shakes, or it doesn't maintain its tone, or it comes out sounding thin, or we sound like a little girl when we want to sound like the tigress we are, all of these things. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking about how the voice is so powerful. And I think it's something that maybe because we just grow up speaking, right? Like our experience as a child is you learn to talk and then you use your voice to communicate what you need. We kind of take this thing that we have for granted and we don't often think about the way that we use it. And I think for me, the first time I really thought about the way that I use my voice was when I started podcasting. And then soon after I started teaching yoga. And it was like, okay, I have to use my voice in a way to communicate certain things that I want with this. And it's interesting because I think a lot of yoga teachers can probably relate to, maybe you've had a bad day or maybe you've had, a fight with your best friend or your partner or something. You go to teach. And of course, you want to leave that stuff at the door in many ways. But that's the type of stuff that I feel like kind of can come through in your voice. And it's hard to project your voice in a confident way if you're feeling sad or you're not feeling confident. And so I'd love to really dive into how we can use this voice really as a tool, especially when we're teaching yoga.
Yeah, I mean, I love, like, there's so many things I can say, and we only have so much time, but I love what you just said, and I want to highlight it because I think this is really a really critical thing. When we shut our feelings out, when we say no to our thoughts, when we say, I shouldn't feel like this, I shouldn't sound like that, we literally create a disconnection in ourselves. How can we sound empowered? How can we have impact with our message when we are severing ourselves based upon our judgments? So this is just not the way to work. If we had a fight, like if something happened, we have to love it. I know that's hard. I know when we've got to show up to bat and we need to have game face on, but we still have to accept that and own it and allow it the space it needs inside of us in a controlled way. I'm not saying be taken over by it, but allow it to be there. And through doing that, we can use that as fuel for the voice. So then it becomes something that empowers us as opposed to disempowering us.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So kind of taking the things that are happening in our lives and being able to translate that into something that we can communicate through our voice in a way that is more impactful or powerful, as opposed to kind of getting stuck in the sadness, or I guess maybe more of the emotions behind it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm actually, yes. And I'm saying more that we can use the emotions and the sadness as fuel for the voice. So we can,
Okay.
it's almost like, so one part of the technique that I teach is to look at like how can emotions and thoughts and like roles, for example, being like a yogi in Shavasana, or being like an innocent child, or being a powerful boss, like all of these different roles, how can, in like feeling these experiences in our body and imagining them and playing with them essentially, how can they color our voice and allow us to express ourselves and to share our voice in a certain way? So for example, if we're maybe wanting to give a yin class, or we're wanting to guide our yogis through meditation, or shavasana, or yoga nidra, for example, we're probably going to want a voice to sound in a different way than if we're doing, a Saturday morning vinyasa or something like this. Like we want to use our voice in a different way. So, and we want the voice to touch our yogis in a different way. We want the voice to create the atmosphere of the room that is really, really visceral to feel. We want our voice to be able to do all of these things. So we can do that through these two ways. One is that we can do role play. And if anybody is curious, I've written a whole thing on my blog about that. Maybe we can include that in the show notes.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Because I go through the whole thing. So maybe that's going to be easier. So this is one way of doing it. And the other way is to really align with and accept where we are in the moment, and allow the emotions of where we are in the moment in a controlled way to fuel the voice. So these are the two ways that we can really align with ourselves emotionally, psychologically in the moment, to have impact, to create this atmosphere that we want to create. Now, of course, the other thing that needs to be working is the mechanics. Like if we align with our emotions and all of this, and we feel powerful and the voice is coming out, it might be that it's coming out in an incorrect way. And that if we continue to speak like that over time, we're going to have some pretty serious health issues going on with the voice, like vocal loss, like what I had, or, vocal nodes, or anything like a hoarse voice, itching, burning, scratching, feeling breathless. Like all of these things are signs that we're not using our voice mechanically in the right way. So again, there are these two things that we should really learn as yoga teachers, to be able to use the voice correctly, healthily, sustainably, and to really be able to align with what we want to create and have that level of impact that we know we can with our classes and with our students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And if somebody is experiencing this sort of, anything that's kind of physically happening with their voice because they are teaching a lot, how do you kind of heal that, or where do you go with that?
Yeah. So, honestly, I would really recommend getting voice training, like hands down. I just think this is really important, because if you're doing things habitually over time, incorrect, until you understand the system that you're using, and until you understand then what you're doing incorrectly, you're going to keep doing it. And things that start out as what I just said, like maybe a little bit of breathlessness sometimes when you're speaking or teaching, might lead to complete vocal loss over time, especially for those of us that are teaching. I mean, I know some people who are teaching 10, 13, 14 classes a week. I mean, this is a lot. It's a lot on the voice. So I recommend like really getting a very clear understanding from a professional of how your voice works and how you can use it mechanically correctly, so in a sustainable way.
Yeah, that's definitely a great tip or piece of advice. So thank you for that. And something that I find is really interesting about this is I was just thinking about how I feel like more and more, the more conversations I have around this type of stuff, is that yoga teacher training programs seem to be missing so many things that we need as professional yoga teachers. And I was thinking to all the training I've done, and of course, we've learned to use our words and use our language in a specific way to cue people in and out of poses and get them to kind of understand what you want them, like the shapes you want them to make. But I've never been trained in terms of, how to use my voice in a physical sense, how to make sure I'm not misusing my voice. And then another big topic with this, I think, is this idea of the authentic teaching voice. And I know you mentioned there's this physical component of misuse, but then I think there's also, if you kind of go more spiritually, there's the throat chakra and this idea that sometimes we can be blocked there. And something I've heard from yoga teachers is like, I don't know how to communicate what I want to say authentically. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit from the side of being a voice
Yeah.
coach.
Wow, you just said so many things. So I have to try and track back over the things that got said. I was like holding 5 things in my head. I'm like, okay. And then, of course, I'm not writing anything down. Yes, I just want to say, firstly, before I forget, to the point that you mentioned about the yoga teacher trainings, that's actually why I created my online voice course for yoga teachers. Like, I literally created something for this last year because I was so upset about this. Because as I mentioned, so many people were coming to me who were yoga teachers who weren't learning this. And since then, so I have this online, but since then, I'm also reaching out to like many, many, many yoga teacher training programs offering my services, because I also honestly do not understand how and why. You can, in 4 hours, you can learn what you need to learn about the voice in order to use it in a healthy and aligned way. It's not that time consuming. And I really do believe that those 4 hours can be fitted into a 200-hour training program, because let's face it, yeah, we can demo as much as we like, but the voice is the way you're connecting with your students. The voice is the way you're creating the atmosphere for your class. The voice is the thing they're going to remember. The voice is the way you touch them. If you don't know how to use it properly, if you're not being taught how to use it properly, what are we doing in a yoga teacher training program? I feel very passionate about that. Sorry. Maybe that comes through.
No,
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's great to hear how passionate you are about this.
Yeah, because I just got so frustrated, because then I was like, okay, let's have a look. Like, before I created my course, I got curious and I started researching programs. And I think I found, like, in North America, Australasia, and in German-speaking Europe, 5% of the courses I found actually offered something to do with the voice. And to your point, often it was just cueing, which, yes, is very important, but it wasn't actual, like, proper voice technique. How does this thing work? How can I use it correctly? How can I use it emotionally in alignment with what I want to share, that I can really create a true, authentic relationship with my students? So that really frustrated me. I'm still frustrated about it. It really motivates me to try to connect to more people and to share this work. And it also motivates me because I understand how that feels to not be able to go to work because you can't talk. Like, that's horrible. It's a horrible feeling to have. It's very disempowering, and it's really unnecessary. To your other point, now I have to try and remember them. You spoke about maybe you can help me. You spoke about the throat chakra, and can you
the
rephrase
spiritual,
that one again?
the spiritual side of things and how we can have these blockages kind of in our throats. And sometimes that's like we're holding back something or we're not sure how to communicate. And I think that can come through a lot as yoga teachers as well.
So I actually have a diploma in spiritual healing. So I learned a lot in my early days about chakras and working energetically. Since that time, I'm really fascinated by the power of belief and belief systems. And a lot of the work I do with people, especially one-to-one, is really looking at these core beliefs. Because I, in my experience, see that often what you just said is, I'm not able to connect authentically, or something else. These are self-imposed judgments that we think, but we can inquire behind that and we can transform them. And then I think we can release the heart, the throat, the solar plexus, all of these things that get blocked when we really go to the seed. Like, what is the belief here? What's really going on here? Why is my jaw getting stiff and my throat closing, like physically closing? every time this situation happens, why do I start to sweat on my hands? Like, what's happening? When we trace it back, the body is responding to the mind is responding to the body, the spiritual self, it's all connected. So when we trace it back, I think there's an incredible power and key when we have a look at the belief systems that are underlying our relationship with our voice and self-expression.
I am so excited to welcome back Offering Tree as our sponsor. You've heard me talk about them in the past, and many of you are already among their growing community of happy Offering Tree users. With everything that goes into running your yoga business, Offering Tree created a single platform that can solve all your marketing and time management headaches. With a single account, you can create a website in minutes, set up a newsletter, create a blog, schedule classes, and take payment. The great part is that all of Offering Tree's features work seamlessly together, so you don't need to pay for and manage 5 different services. Instead, you get it all in one easy, affordable package. And now, the big news. Offering Tree makes it easy for you to manage memberships. Annual, semi-annual, tiered offerings. Regardless of types of memberships you offer, you can create them in Offering Tree with the ease of use Offering Tree is becoming famous for. This amazing platform was built by yogis, so you know they get it. Offering Tree also provides helpful tutorials and webinars to keep you growing as a teacher. It's part of their mission as a public benefit corporation. I love their product and their company. They're providing special pricing for MBM listeners. So if you want to spend more time teaching and less time managing your digital presence, then check them out at offeringtree.com/MBOM. Again, that's offeringtree.com/MBOM. All right, now back to the episode. It's really interesting because I've found in my own personal practices, like the more I tune into things that are going on in my body and come from a place of curiosity too, like, oh, this thing is happening. What could that be about? Maybe diving into my own practice or a meditation or journaling or something. I'm usually able to kind of unlock it a little bit. And I think our voice is a really interesting one because it is kind of this powerhouse for asking what we need and getting what we want in our lives. And then if you work in a career like teaching yoga, where you use your voice all the time to communicate to your clients, to your students, it's very important that you have, I guess, kind of like a good relationship with that voice.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to just share a little thing that's kept coming up as we've been talking. My intuition's like pumping on my head. This is a little thing that we can all do. So maybe everybody who's listening, if you're not driving a car and if you're able to use both hands, then follow through. And if you are, then pause this and do it later. But this is something that you could do every time before you start teaching. Like, honestly, this will take a minute and it can be really powerful. So the idea is you place, your right hand over your heart. I always like to then place the left hand over the low belly. Maybe Amanda, you can do this with me too.
Yeah, I'm going to do it with you.
Okay. So left hand's over the low belly, right hand is over the heart. And we're just going to start really belly breathing. So, and allow the body to soften in this space. Allow it to relax. If it's the end of the day, yeah. If it's the end of your day, then just let go. End of the week, maybe. And so we can continue this really, mindful belly breathing to just bring us back into body awareness. And now we keep breathing like this for the whole exercise. And while we're doing that, the right hand, the thumb of the right hand, is very softly, very gently rubbing itself across the heart center, across the chest. So the way this thumb should be moving is like, imagine if you're touching the cheek of someone you love. So maybe it's your partner or a child, very tenderly, very lovingly. We just become aware to the sensations that brings for us. And then we start to take our awareness deeper beneath the right hand into the seat of the heart center. Feeling the abundant love and bliss and oneness that is infinitely available to us in every moment in this center. And then we say to ourselves, and I think this is a really wonderful thing to say out loud, I love and accept myself, and I love and accept my voice as I am, and it is now. And we do this 3 times. I love and accept myself, and I love and accept my voice as I am and as it is now. I love and accept myself, and I love and accept my voice as I am and it is now. And this is a really yummy space that one can stay in for as long as they need, this space of really loving connection and groundedness. And when you're ready to come out of this space, I always recommend taking a deep breath in through the nose and feeling the expansion of the body, and then sighing it out through the mouth. Yeah, doing that twice more in your own pace, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And the last time. Yeah. So this is a very simple exercise, but I'm a big fan of less is more, and I often experience that it's the simple things that are the most powerful. So if for anyone who's listening, you were to do this, every time before you teach, or anytime you feel nervous, or when you start to feel the train of thought and judgment and should and shouldn't coming up, taking a breath pause, taking a body connection moment, and then just accepting yourself as you are and accepting your voice as it is now. And this is a wonderful place to start, to what you said before, Amanda, to really soften in the throat, soften in the heart, and allow what we want to share to come out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was amazing. I really like that. I was like, you can just keep me in here for the rest of our time. That's fine with me. No,
Yeah,
I mean, it's so true though. Like when we feel stressed or we feel anxious, I think sometimes we think, or at least I think, like, oh, I just need to take action on a couple things. Maybe I need to get a couple things done. That's what's going to make me feel better. But it's often, reconnecting to my breath, to my body. That's what actually lets me settle in and ground down.
Absolutely. I mean, in Sufism, they say that like the beloved is closer than your jugular vein, the vein in your neck. And, breath, prana, it's always there. It's our best friend, and it's so easy to forget that because we get so busy in our minds and our judgments and the onslaught of information overload and stimulation overload that we have in Western society. But in the end, when we can take time to come back, and it is that taking time to breathe and connect to stillness and connect to body, that really makes the difference.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so for teachers who are feeling like maybe they're struggling to connect with this idea of an authentic voice, do you feel like kind of the first step is really connecting to yourself in that way?
So, yes, absolutely connect to yourself. Do the practices that bring you back into self awareness. That's absolutely step one. And the second is to look at the judgments and the ideals and the thoughts and the constructions that you have placed around the concept of what an authentic voice is. What does that mean? Why do you tell yourself that you can't connect to it? Why do you tell yourself that you're not expressing it? You know, this is very important to have a look at the beliefs that are going on there and to deconstruct them lovingly, mindfully. I often recommend to some of my clients, to keep a voice journal. You know how we keep like a dream journal or maybe a I have my full focus planner here by my computer. So, my work kind of diary / journal. But I recommend keeping a voice journal because that's a really interesting thing to see. Hey, how is she or he going today? What's coming up for me? What's happening? Like, what are the situations where this story of not having an authentic voice is coming up? Like, what are the stimuluses for that in my environment? And then what's happening in my body? What's happening in my mind and my emotions? And I think when we do that over time, we start to get a clearer picture about what's really going on. And then we can get to the root of it. Then we can heal and transform and release, because it's just blocked energy.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. It's interesting too when you brought up what is an authentic voice, because I think that's something I've thought about quite a bit. And I think sometimes when it comes to the word authenticity, there's a lot of interesting sort of meaning that people place on it. And something I've always thought of as a yoga teacher is, if it's something that's true to me that I'm speaking to, that is authentic to me. It's when I'm trying to pull from what other yoga teachers are doing or other things I see people doing, that's when it feels like it's not so authentic to me. And I think in this digital world, which is obviously a beautiful, amazing thing. I mean, I'm in Canada, you're in Germany, we can connect. I'm so grateful for it.
Me too.
But it's also, you can really get like caught up in this comparison. This person's talking about this,
Oh
this
my
person's
gosh.
doing this.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's almost, for me, if I get caught up too much in that, that's when I become blocked in terms of my voice and speaking my truth.
So many things I could say right now. I've got to yes, everything. And like just trying to summarize this, like you kind of say a sentence and then I have 5 thoughts again. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to say all of these things. It wants to come out of me. I think that becoming the parent of ourselves is very necessary for us to live a happy and fulfilled life. And so being the parent of yourself might mean limiting your social media time to when you really just need it for your business. And because I'm saying this because when we sit there and scroll, perhaps not so mindfully through our feed, and then see, of course, these highlight reels of all these incredible humans who are highlighting themselves in the highlight reel, it's really easy to start to feel less and to tell yourself the story, and that train of comparison and that critical voice of judgment just starts running its mouth off. But we can control that, and we can work with that. And again, what's at the center of criticism and comparison? Their beliefs. Like their beliefs, their stories in our heads that are saying something. So this is one thing. The other point I wanted to come back to before you said that is the authentic voice, because it reminded me of, when I'm on stage and I'm singing, there are different moments that I've learned about that I experience. And one of them is the moment where I feel like, obviously my voice is functioning correctly. I feel the system, it's lovely and spacious and open and free, which is how we want it to be. I feel that my mind and my emotions are in alignment with that. And what happens is a space of complete surrender. And then I feel like what I call God, the divine energy, the energy of life, of the universe, I feel it pouring through me. And there is no ego in that space. Like I feel like I surrender myself to something more than I am. And that for me is authenticity, because then whatever wants to come through me is spoken. Whatever needs to be expressed comes out. But when I catch myself on the stage feeling, maybe anxious or fearful, and sure, it happens, when my little monkey mind wants to start picking a fight with me, and I start to kind of diminish myself and diminish my potential and diminish that openness that I felt before to being in that space of surrender, then that for me becomes inauthentic in the way you're using the word. That for me becomes, kind of egoic, and what that comes with as a flag are emotions that don't feel good for me. So rather than feeling peace and joy and bliss and curiosity, which is what I feel in that open, abundant space, and obviously love, maybe I feel, as I said, fear or anxious or frustration or any of these other denser feelings that don't feel free. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And one of the things I'm curious about is I know we talked about with the physical voice, having a voice coach or seeing a professional with this if you are struggling with this. And I know you have a course, which we can definitely put in the show notes and stuff like that. But I'm curious if you have any other tools or tips for yoga teachers in terms of working with their voices, finding their authentic voices, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, we come to these two different things. So one of them is this mechanical voice component, and there I really recommend, understanding what the voice is, how it works, and before you're talking, before you teach, doing a vocal warm up that is approved by a professional. So this is something that I think can really help you to activate correct breathing, to relax the jaw, the throat, the tongue, all of the things that are involved in articulation, and to really help you activate your resonance, to position your voice so that when you want to speak for a long time, or perhaps if you're teaching outside and you want to speak at a volume, that you can do this all in a very safe, controlled, and easy way. I always tell my students that, it's the way of ease, it's the way of flow that we're looking for. It's the way of opening. We're always looking to step away from force. We're looking to step away from, resistance and stiffness and tension. So that's one thing I would say. I would say really, warming the voice up correctly before you teach, and making that a daily habit if you can, to take 3 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day, just to kind of do a few vocal warm-ups. I can give you one in a moment. That will help
Awesome.
you. It's like my go-to if you can't do anything else. I've been caught backstage in toilets doing this before I've had to gig. So I'll give you this one. And then the other thing about the authentic voice is, I think a lot of that also has to do with heart connection. So, that also has to do with, again, self-acceptance and self-love. When we come back into ourselves through the practice of yoga, through the practice of pranayama, through the practice of meditation, when we come back to ourselves through tools that involve accepting ourselves, that involve, you know, deepening our love for ourselves, that involves self-care, then it's much easier, I think you mentioned that before, to listen to the inner voice and to begin to develop a relationship with you. Because if you don't have a relationship with you that you can tangibly feel, then of course you're going to look outside of yourself all of the time to find your identification. So I really recommend, if you want to get that authentic voice, get to know who you are. Really on all levels of your being. Physical, spiritual, emotional, mental. Like, get to know yourself, and sit with that. And you could take a little meditation, for 5 to 10 minutes a day, and do that do that little meditation I guided you guys through before. And then, just connect to your heart center and maybe just write or dance or let out some sounds and see what comes out of you. Yeah, I think it's interesting what we are able to express when we give ourselves the space for it. And by that, I mean downtime with ourselves to let our own voice out and get to know what that is. So, in the constraints of our time together, these are the two things I would recommend. Warming the voice up, doing some vocal work, understanding how your voice works properly, and then self-acceptance, practice the meditation I shared before, and then dedicate a little bit of time to you each day where you're really allowing yourself to express through the medium that feels good to you in a way that's in alignment with your heart. And don't judge it. Just let it come out and then be curious and see, what's happening here. And then maybe you're going to get to know yourself on a deeper level. Oh yeah, and journal with your voice and see what comes up there, because that is a really good tip. The exercise that I want to give you, so you're in Canada. I imagine it's starting to get a little colder.
Yes,
So what
it
we can
is.
do, yeah, I remember when I lived there, it was the coldest
Like September
ever.
1st, Mother Nature's like falls here.
I remember it being minus 35 there. I was like, it's the only time in my life where I thought, as an Australian who grew up at the beach in the desert, who thought -5 Celsius was warm. because it had been
Yeah.
-30 for so many days that -5 was suddenly incredible.
I know it's crazy. Albertans will wear like shorts when it gets to -5 when
I
spring
saw
comes.
I saw her. I was like, what's happening? It was crazy. Yeah, it's
Just for
really a
the
different.
record, when I say Albertans, I don't mean me, despite the fact that I'm Albertan. You will not see me doing that.
Okay, good. I, as an Australian, will not do that either. So the exercise, you want to imagine that you're super cold. So it's like, if you want to give it a bodily, visceral effect, you can like put your finger, like kind of imagine you're giving yourself a bear hug so that your arms, like your hands are around the opposite arm. Right hand outside of left arm, upper arm, left hand outside of right upper arm. And then you want to imagine that it's super cold and you make a sound of BR, but you hold it so that your lips blow together a little bit like a horse. So it sounds like this if I hold it on one tone. Amanda, are you brave? Do you want to try this with me?
Yeah, I'll try it. I feel like this is like what you see babies doing. Okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, kind of like that.
It's not going.
Yeah. So sometimes it works really easy and for others, so we need to make sure that we have no tension in the jaw, that the jaw is relaxed, that the tongue is like super chilled out on the bottom of the mouth and the tip of the tongue is connected very lightly to the back of the bottom teeth. And if it's too hard with exactly, do it with a P. Just blow your lips out. Yeah, I can hear it. And then you make it more of a BR instead of a P. The action, the mechanic is the same. You just kind of start to make a tone. Yeah, it's coming. Yeah.
Need to work on it.
You got to
It's
practice.
actually harder than it sounds.
Yeah, I know.
Everyone
So
listening, you should try it. Let me know how it goes. I'm going to be working on that.
I'm going to give you guys a quick extra tip. So I've taught this to everybody, like all of the people I've done on teacher trainings, workshops, and private students. This is because it's my go-to exercise, the megger. If it's not working, it's because the breathing is not supporting you enough. So what you can do for that is do like a really short, like a snake. If you were going to step on a snake, the sound it would make, a sharp, a hard S. Exactly. And that feeling, be aware of what's happening in your low belly. There's an activation beneath the navel that's drawing in towards the spine when you make the sound. Okay. And now try and do that same activation when you do. Yeah. Yeah, it's coming along. So you start with that, and then when you can, start to bring in some vocalization. Now, the high niveau of this is like to imagine that you're in India driving a tuk-tuk, and it's going to sound like this. So you do it a few times, but you're basically running up and down your vocal range. And why this is awesome is because as I just kind of quickly told you, it activates your breathing, the breath support, which is necessary or critical because we're wind instruments and the vocal cords operate through air pressure. If the air pressure is not working, they're not going to work properly. And then the other thing it does is it helps to kind of relax up all of the, the muscles in the lips, the cheeks, the jaw, the tongue. So you'll start to feel like, Amanda, you should feel a little bit tingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do feel that.
Yeah. And then it also activates the voice. And then when we understand how resonance works, we can also add that in there too. So it's kind of like a quick all-rounder that if you have no other time, you could do for like 30 seconds or a minute as you're setting up this studio before your students come.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for taking me through that. There's definitely work to be done for me, and I'm really curious to hear how other people go with it. And I have just loved this conversation. This has been so fun. For people who are interested in learning more about you, where can they go to find you?
Yeah, so there are a few different places. So my website is obviously the normal thing before the website, and then Kirbanu, K for K. I can't think of a word for K. K-I-R-B-A-N-U Kirbanu, so my name, I think you'll see it in the show notes, .com. And then you'll find my website. But the other thing is that you can actually just contact me via WhatsApp. So, and this is like my most preferred method. So if you want to connect to me, if you have questions about anything you heard here, if you're interested in my courses, or if you would like to do some coaching, just write me a WhatsApp message. My number is +49 176 890 71320. And and the other thing is, if you Google me, Kirbanu, I'm the only one with that name on the internet. So you're going to find a lot of stuff. And if you want to listen to my music, you can have a look for the same name anywhere where you stream music online: Spotify, Apple, iTunes, all of it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all of that. I'll make sure it's all in the show notes. And thank you for this amazing conversation today, Kirbanu.
Hey, you're so welcome. Thank you for everything that you're doing for the yoga community and creating this amazing space for teachers to be able to learn and to connect and to develop themselves. I think it's really, really awesome. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of it.
You're welcome.
All right, friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast with Kirbanu. I really got a lot out of this episode, and I hope that you did as well. I also hope that you'll join us for the webinar and workshop that we'll be hosting on December 10th. So it's December 10th at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And all of that information is over on the show notes at mbmyoga.com/Kirbanu, as well as on social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. As always, thank you so much to you for listening to the show. I am so grateful that you've decided to tune in today. And also thanks again to our sponsor, OfferingTree. To start teaching more and managing less, head on over to offeringtree.com/MBM to get an exclusive discount. All right, have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Namaste. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbmyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbmyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.